Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad to have you back. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already done so, would you please subscribe to the podcast? It's on 30 different channels, Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, you name it, it's out there. And while you're out there, go to globalinvestoragent.com. It's a new site we created this year to showcase some of the real estate agents around the country who are trained to work with investors. They're not just your traditional agents. They have access to every single property and owner in the country, all kinds of information. They know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off market properties for you and I, the investors. So in any case, keep that in mind. And in the meantime, we got a great guest today, Chris Angell, all the way from beautiful Spokane, Washington. I know some people, it's like tomato. Why do you say Spokane and not Spokane? It's because I have a friend there and he pronounces it Spokane. So,
that's how you say it. Yeah.
So Chris, hey, welcome aboard, man. I really appreciate you taking your time to do this. And I know this is going to be a great subject for everybody. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super passionate about this topic and this industry. So I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Awesome. Well, listen, if we could, just to give everybody some context, would you mind giving a little bit of background that led you to where you are today, and then we can jump into some examples and some lessons, and it'll bring more. This will bring more color to it,
Absolutely. Yeah. At the age of 24, I didn't know what I wanted to do or be professionally, and somehow I found my way to Rich Dad Poor Dad, which got my mind thinking about passive income and real estate as a vehicle to do so. And I thought, while I'm here, I might as well get a real estate license. So became an agent in 2001. I was at Keller Williams at the time. I think we were 10,000 agents nationally, and sold for 6.5 years. Mm-hmm. I was never a great agent, and I got to like 30, 35 homes a year in sales. Mm-hmm. And that's really important to my story because I really wrestled with how do I build relationship with people, and beating the streets just wasn't authentic for me. It didn't feel good to me. Mm-hmm. I was great with people and I was good at leadership. So 2007 was recruited to become a team leader of a market center in Spokane. That's why I moved here. Mm-hmm. We had 200 agents, and this is from 2007 all the way down to the bottom of the recession, 2011. That's when I stepped out of that role. And we recruited average 75 agents a year in that great recession, which is pretty decent. And I think a lot of that came down to training and content. Like, how did we nurture the relationships with people in a time that's really uncertain? Then I stepped out of that because I really felt like my calling was teaching, leading, coaching. And so in 2011, I started my own coaching company. And I guess the last thing I'd add to that is 2018, I flirted with my own marketing company for 1.5 years where we produced podcasts for businesses of all kinds. So I've really seen content at a lot of different levels. Mm-hmm. And how it really can build relationship in a way that feels congruent to whoever you are. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love the background. I love the history. I love your being candid too. And so for all the listeners out there who are real estate agents, and if you're not an agent, chances are you have an agent, or you have a friend or neighbor who's an agent. Please pass this on to them, because one of the most critical things in the business, I'm speaking to you agents now, is learning about marketing. Learn how to market yourself in its entire industry in and of itself. But the reality is that's the business you're in, because if you don't do that, or you can't do that, you're going to have a job, and maybe not such a fun job, so take this seriously and really listen and take notes. So moving forward then, Mark, I'm sorry, Chris, I got Mark on the brain here. Well, that was the last podcast, but in any case, Chris, so for agents, there's so much to cover. I mean, timing, location, how to, things like that. Yeah. But let's just talk about the basic meat and potatoes, the what, like what actually is marketing? Because I think people are confused. They think it's like advertising, and I'm thinking, well, marketing is advertising is a component of marketing, but there's research, there's planning, there's all kinds of stuff. And I don't want to overwhelm people. I just want them to know that when you feel, think, speak, and act like a business person, these things come more easily to you. So would you mind kind of touching on let's just talk about the what is it? So then we can get into some
Yeah. I always say marketing is just a conversation. It's a conversation that you're leading for many people. And the more effective you can be with it, the more you can control the conversation, or the more that you're inviting people into the world you're creating of this conversation. It's really that simple. So the question becomes, what is the conversation you want to lead? And I think one of the challenges I see in real estate is so much of the real estate marketing out there is real estate specific. So it's come to my open house, look what I listed, look what I sold. And the challenge is the buying cycle, according to NAR, is what, every 7 to 9 years people buy a house. So for 6.5 years, it's an irrelevant message, what you listed and what you sold. Doesn't mean you shouldn't put it out there to continue to demonstrate your credibility and your professionalism. But as a conversation in itself, it doesn't strike the heart of people, so it doesn't make them want to consume the content. So when you're talking about content marketing, you really got to find a way into people's hearts, because every other real estate agent is talking about what they listed and what they sold. So there's no differentiation there. Yeah,
I appreciate that. I know one of the things I learned years ago from a guy named Dan Kennedy, he called it the marketing triangle. And he said, really, you can boil it down to this. Imagine a triangle. So it's got 3 corners. The top of the top triangle is the market, the people you're looking to serve. Then one of the other corners is your message, what you're saying to that market. And the third one is the media, which form of communication are you using to provide the message to the market. And he said, when you have alignment between those 3, you've got yourself a great marketing plan and a successful business. And that really struck a chord with me, because I realized I was doing a lot of canned stuff. I'm doing like prepaid postcards, and they were trying to be all things to all people, or dear neighbor, dear friend. But when I learned to really niche it down and focus and get personal about it and write, and it was write as if I was writing to one person, writing like I'm writing to you, for example. That's when things started to change, and what it comes down to really is conversation. If you're writing a letter to somebody, you're kind of it's just conversation,
Right.
So can we touch more on that? So, and by the way, for the listeners here, I apologize. I mentioned that, hey, I'm speaking to you, the agents, but really, if you own a business, and I mean, dentists, chiropractors, engineers with a consulting firm, the fundamentals never change.
Right.
Your practice may be different, but these fundamentals don't change. And sorry, Chris, I'm going long.
No,
here,
that's I feel like we're in a day and age where things are getting commoditized. So if you're a chiropractor, then everybody else is a chiropractor, and the way we're all competing on marketing our business is chiropractic talk. Now it's a race to the bottom, because I'm trying to be how do I differentiate myself? But this whole piece about a conversation, when you can, to those who are the early adopters of content marketing this way, when you can reach the hearts and souls of people you're trying to reach beyond the practice that you do. So if you are a chiropractor, you've got to get unattached from being a practitioner, because that's not the thing that connects to the heart and soul. As an agent, what I struggled with was I was told to make a list of all my friends and family and build my sphere of influence. So I had a list. And the problem with that approach was what it left me with was a random database. It was a random group of people that had no connection to a common idea. The only connection was me. I was the common denominator. And so it's very hard to lead a conversation one to many. It's hard to create relationship at scale when the common denominator is me. And so the thing I have to talk about is me, because I don't know what else you're interested in. And it never felt good to do a family newsletter, because I'm like, why do they care? It never felt good to talk. It just was really inefficient. So what I saw was, if you could reverse engineer the database from the conversation you want to lead, this is how you can build a niche. If you want to build a niche, go find the kind of humans you want to serve. What's the conversation they're interested that you are also interested in? And then go build 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 of those people. And now you're all connected to the conversation you want to lead. Makes such a different approach to content, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when it comes to content, I know a lot of people are thinking, what's an example of content? And I know in our world that we got lots to choose from, especially today. The news is one of our best friends, because all that's in the news, So, But is that a good example of content? In other words, current affairs, current news today. Would that be a good example of content? And what are maybe some other examples that you wouldn't mind sharing?
Again, because I mean, where I come from, having seen so many agents struggle with content, like, YouTube came out in, I think, 2004. I became a team leader in 2007. So content's been around. The platforms to create content has been around.
Mm-hmm.
And still to this day, people really struggle with being visible and consistent
Mm-hmm.
in content. And so my whole approach is about what's the path of least resistance to you showing up to create consistent content. And so I often will look with clients around that. Like, what could you talk about? So the first thing is, what could you talk about
Mm-hmm.
and never get tired of? And if that's news bits, if it's your local neighborhood or your community, if it's politics, if it's, whatever the thing is that you could talk about endlessly is the thing you want to sort of focus on. How you do it,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're doing it in a soundbite or an interview style or direct to camera, that's kind of up to you also. What some people have a really hard time staring into a camera, but they're super natural talking to somebody else in an interview.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you got to find the thing that you could really do that would have you easily show up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, when you were in practice, when you went from being in the business of helping people buy and sell homes and being in a leadership role,
Mm-hmm.
did a lot of this become more apparent to you then? Like all of a sudden you can see it through a lens, like you're 60,000 feet now watching other people. It's like all of a sudden, wow, this really now makes sense. Is that a phenomenon that happened to you when you made that transition? And
oh, for sure. I think the challenge is when I or you listening to this are in the trenches of your own business and you go to classes and read books and you hear everybody else say how it is that you try to do it. You only have your own lived experience to feel out like it doesn't feel right to me. I don't know why. I feel like I'm lazy, or I feel like I'm not being a good student, or there's all the, internal dialogue that happens in a leadership role, having 200 agents and coaching them around their lead generation. I all of a sudden could see I wasn't alone as an agent. Like my agents now in a leadership role were struggling with the very same thing I wrestled with. And it was like sometimes we can't, pat ourselves on the back. I just was like, these people are amazing human beings who are super smart, but they feel really dumb because they just feel like they're not doing the cold calls and the things that we're taught to do in real estate. And I was like, relationship shouldn't be this hard. That was the aha moment. I'm like, relationship shouldn't be this hard. And that's what pushed me into content. Cause I'm like, we can build relationship upstream from the point of sale. I mean, that's what we're taught. That's why we do pie days and pop buys and all the things we're taught to do in referral-based business is all relationship building.
Yeah, that really is. I mean, the business, and this is probably true for almost any business. It's the relationship that's the key.
Yep.
That's the business right there. I mean, if you've got, a personal relationship, so you know each other by name, and I got to the point I was actually taking notes. We didn't have all the sophistication that we have today, but I remember thinking to myself, boy, I don't want to get stumped when I'm meeting somebody like in a grocery store out accidentally. Like I come across a client in a grocery store. I want to be able to know their name, but more importantly, I want to be able to remember something about them. And what I realized is it wasn't the fact that I had a note that made a difference. It's the fact that I took the time to make a note so it imprinted in my brain. It was more that made the relationship more personal. The fact that I took time to take a note, that's what I discovered, and it really did pay off. And even today, I mean, I'll go out and, I moved away and came back, and I'll see people in a grocery store or one of my former soccer, kids. I coached soccer for years, and now they're adults, and they still call me, "Hey, Coach Wilson, how you doing?" And the filming of things, and I don't remember a clue about. Now they've got kids, So, but it really is rewarding and refreshing. I tell you what, for those of you listening, whether you're a dentist, chiropractor, engineer, whatever, when you have a conversation with people, it is more personal. You're going to develop a relationship automatically. And I'm not saying you're going to be their best friends, but chances are you'll invite them to picnics and you'll go to have dinner with them, things like that. But the most important thing is when it comes to your business and then their neighbor selling a home, for example, or their neighbor's child needing braces, they're going to think of you because you took the time to talk with them, have a conversation with them. And whatever your content was meaningful and relevant.
Yeah.
That's it. I wish I knew that, Chris, when I first started, because when I first started, I was just trying to, it was transaction oriented. It wasn't relationship oriented. And when I switched to being a relationship focused person, even today, still today, I mean, I'm growing what we understand to be the largest production team in the country by states represented, not in numbers, but we're getting there. We're actually doing quite well. But as far as representation goes, we're in more states than any other team that I'm aware of. And it all comes down to those relationships. All those people I taught all those years, we're now working together either directly or indirectly. And it really is rewarding. I can't begin to tell you how fulfilling it is. And that to me is the gold in the business, is the fulfillment I get from the relationships. The money just becomes a measurement. It's a measurement of success, but it's not the success itself. It's the relationship, you know?
Yeah. I would say, there, if you think about real estate, or you could be, you know, I know you're using different examples of business, dentists, chiropractors. If you think about building let's say you're really good at parenting, and that's a passionate topic. You could talk about parenting all day long, never get tired of it. And you built a database of 2,000 people in your local market that want to lean into the conversation of parenting because that matters to them. Then I say, like, what percent of parents have real estate in their future? What percent of parents have braces in their future? What percent of parents have chiropractic care in their future? And you start to see, like, oh, right, 90+% of people would need my services at some point. So it's just about putting myself in proximity to them and relationship to them, so that when we get downstream to the point of sale, I've positioned myself in a relationship that other chiropractors, dentists, agents don't have, because my conversation was more relevant to the things that mattered to them. You know, that's the whole thing about content this way. So it's really important, if you want to create relationship with many people in a very small amount of time, that you have an idea. Seth Godin calls it an idea, right? Like a tribe is a group of people connected to one another, connected to a leader, and connected to an idea. And if you have the idea that we're all connected to, that's what makes content easy and relationship easy. And you can see a lot of examples of this in the podcast world, for example. One of my favorite podcasts is called the Robcast with Rob Bell. He gets millions and millions of downloads a month per episode. And I feel like I know him. I know his humor. I don't know where he's going to go in the content, but I tune in because I want to spend time with him and where his beautiful mind goes. And I feel like I know him. He doesn't know me, but this is the effect of me feeling like Rob is my friend, and I've only met him once, and he wouldn't remember me. Yeah, that's relationship at scale. But it starts with an idea of what Rob represents as the thing he wants to talk about. Yeah.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper if we could. When it comes to content and the relationship, in your business practice now, so you went from being in sales to being a leader of people in sales, now to being a teacher. So in the world of teaching and coaching, do you have an example of maybe the first person you ever coached in your business that really understood what you were saying, took it to heart, listened, and applied, and maybe one of your favorite examples of a success from that person's viewpoint? Hey, Chris, I just, like for me, it was all about the investor. Chris, I just took what you learned or took what you taught me. I applied it, and I got this great investor, and he's already bought 10 properties. That kind of thing. Anything come to mind from the early days that was like your juice and kept you going to the next day and the next week and the next month and next year?
It's so funny. I wish that were my story. I feel like I'm always 8 to 10 years ahead of where the market goes. So when I started talking about podcasting and content over 10 years ago, people were not getting it. It's so weird to be an early adopter. You feel sometimes like, am I wrong? Am I off on this? So I think a lot of people wanted to lean into it. Like, okay, it feels like you're offering me another way to do this marketing thing. And the challenge with humanity is most people just aren't consistent. So if I fast forward, the trick is finding people who are consistent and teaching them this thing.
Gotcha.
So if I fast forward to the last 3 years, I've started to find people and look for those kind of people. There's a guy named Ivan. He's actually he's a relationship manager at a private financial institution. He travels the country to, nurture relationships with high net worth people. And he has a whole show called Conversation. He wrote a book years ago called Conversations, and it was really his model or his method for how do you have conversations with people to produce results. He went through my class of the stuff, the way I teach content, and created a show called Conversations about Conversations. And he's been so consistent. And then when you look at his YouTube statistics, it's just crazy the amount of it really shows like you gotta stay. It's a long play. Marketing is a long play. This isn't like you try it for a week and it doesn't work, so you stop. He's consistently producing content, and his YouTube stats, I think he had like 6,000 views over the course of 5 years. And in the last year, he's had like 11,000. It's hockey stick type results with him sticking to the topic, the conversation that matters to him, and then finding people to talk about it with. And now algorithms are finding him, people are finding him, content's getting out in the streams.
I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for participating in the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Also wanted to let you know that the book Global Investor Agent is officially out in print and in Kindle on Amazon. You can get it by clicking on the link right here. If you are an agent, definitely grab yourself a copy. This book, guys, was not just written by me. I also included 8 other investor agents from around the country. And I didn't just handpick them. I literally opened it up to the entire audience, and it was first come, first serve. So you're going to get feedback from radio agents all the way up to top 25 team leaders, some on my team, some are not on my team, with valuable insight and instructions and guidance and actual checklist to follow to not just survive, but thrive in this market. I know you're looking for that advantage, and this is it. By the way, if you are an investor, grab a copy for your agent. And for everybody, all profits from the sale of the book, Kindle and print, all go to the Healing House Foundation, 100%. Thank you for doing that too, guys. Let's get back to the show. Yeah. Well, I like that. And that's how, the search engines work. Google, SEO, search engine optimization is, even though it's applied as a science, the meaning behind it, it's all based on the relationship and relevance. In other words, you've like the kind of summary fashion. What you're saying here is, find your passion. What it is you can keep talking about day in, day out, and never get tired of it because you're passionate about it. And when you do that, you'll naturally attract other people who are interested in the same subject. So right. When you're speaking on podcasts and you write blogs and things like that, and you have YouTube videos, and there's consistency. You mentioned the word consistency, by the way, too. And I do have to tell you this, Chris, this is really ironic. So I mentioned the prior podcast guest, and at the end, I said, hey, can you think of something, a lesson from your granddad, for example, that really stuck with you for the rest of your life? He said, yeah, you have to be consistent.
Wow.
And I'm thinking in marketing, boy, how appropriate. You have to be consistent in marketing. You can't start and stop. It's a momentum thing,
That's why it matters so much that you're passionate about it. Because if you're doing it to get something and then you don't get the thing you're doing it for, then you stop and you're like, well, I didn't get the thing, so I'm not going to do it anymore. Yeah. I really say content for me is a spiritual practice. If you really want to go out on the woo-woo edge here, I feel like you showing up to lead a conversation has to come from you caring about something enough to say it over and over and over again. Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. And so back to the SEO. This was a practical thing for everybody listening is, let's say you have a YouTube video and you put a description in there, and you have a website and you have certain words and messages in your website. You're telling your story, for example. There's going to be certain words and phrases that come up consistently because you're being consistent in your message. Well, that's going to resonate with a certain group of people. And Google, the software, the analytics, they recognize this programmatically. They capture this, and they're going to drive anybody who has an interest in your subject to you, to your podcast, to your YouTube channel, to your Facebook page, your website. That's why it's so important. And I'll give you a really good example of where I really messed up one time. Early in my business career, I was pretty successful, and I built a brokerage company. Then I built a property management company because all those investors needed people to manage their properties.
everybody kept saying, why don't you build a title company? We need title insurance for every one of these properties we buy. And you've already got the relationships. Why don't you just do that too? It's just like easy money. And I remember thinking to myself, I never thought of title work as being fun or exciting. To me, it was a necessary evil. Oh my gosh, we got to go through the title. It's scary. Is this thing going to close? And lo and behold, I launched it, and we made some money. But within a year, I'm thinking you can't do this anymore. I mean, I didn't have the heart for it, didn't have the passion for it, and mistakes were being made. I wasn't present for the people working for me, and it was wrong. So I sold the business. Perfect example, different genre, but perfect example of where, follow your heart. Your parent, hopefully everybody here had a parent or a grandparent said, do what you love, and your career will develop and evolve. Your business will develop and your profit will come in. And boy, is it true. I just didn't listen to it when I was 18 years old,
Yeah. I think that takes a little bit of lived experience. I think it takes failing forward. I feel like my whole story of business in 20 years is a story of failing forward, but it's a story of following the breadcrumbs of my heart. It's the story of following the thing that feels the next right thing to do. And I think in some cases, I wasn't willing to sell out to, I did sell out, right? To what do I need to do to make a buck? I did sell out to that, but I didn't stay in that space because it was so uncomfortable that I kept finding my way back to what is right for me. What is right for me? And I think when you have a strategy in marketing that feels aligned and congruent, that's the secret sauce, because nobody can promise you a result in marketing. That people that promise you a result in marketing are selling you something. There's, everybody's going to take their best case study and say, look at the kind of results we get. And yet that's not how it is 100% of the time. That's the exception, not the norm. So part of this is waking up. And if you've been in business for any length of time, you get this, but so the trick becomes finding the practice, finding the thing that you can consistently show up to around the topic you can show up to, and then build relationships, build a database, build people around that. Versus the other way around, where it's trying to hustle and find people to sell things to and have no relationship with them after the sale. You're like, okay, well, I guess I gotta go hunt down another one.
Yeah.
So
it is. And when it's transaction based, it's work. And if you're not passionate about it, it's going to become drudgery. And, but if you're serving people, I'm pretty sure dentists getting a dental practice, because when they were kids, they probably, daydreamed about being a dentist. They were drawn to it. So I had a cousin who was going to be a doctor. He knew it when he was 4 years old. And today he's a pediatric trauma surgeon. I didn't have that. I didn't know I thought I was going to be a cowboy astronaut. That's what I was going to do. Well, guess what? The cowboys are a relic from history now. And they don't just let any old person become an astronaut. I did work for NASA, by the way. That was pretty neat.
Wow. That's cool.
But what I want to do, if you don't mind, Chris, is, I like your style. I like the way you carry yourself, and you're consistent, but what is your, how do people engage with you? I found you've got a great presence online. But what would somebody expect if they were to contact you or reach out to you on your website? What's some of the things a new agent or somebody new in business could or should expect as far as, working with you, coming out of there with a vision and maybe even a plan? What does that look like?
Yeah, most of the work I do these days is all around getting you back to you. I did so many years of trying to coach the tactics and strategies of business, and only to have people not feel like it was aligned or congruent for who they are. So a lot of the work I do with people is listening for, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? What do you care about? And then in some ways helping them see that you're a leader. If you already feel like you're a leader, what I've experienced with those people is that they've become a leader in a particular area and they're hitting a ceiling in that space of leadership. And now they're afraid to step into the bigger vision of what they really want to lead, the movement they want to lead, the social change they want to lead. That stuff's the stuff that really cranks me up is, how do we go change the world? Let's go change the world. Let's go change the world. But a lot of times people feel like they have too much to lose because they've built what they've built. And now it's like, wow, but I'm known for being a chiropractor. I'm known for being an agent. Like if I start talking about social change or bigger conversations, like I'm going to confuse people. I'm like, well, I guess that's your choice, isn't it? Like
Mhm.
we're all here to do something, but I want to speak to the world changers. So regardless of your success level, you're brand new in business, or you're seasoned and experienced in business, I want to talk to the world changers. And a lot of that work is figuring out what's it look like.
Mhm.
How do you reverse engineer the people that make it happen? So,
Mhm.
and that involves content. I mean, I feel like the two things for me that I really coach tactically to is content, because
Mhm.
content is the conversation that changes the world, right?
Mhm.
And number two is community. You got to build community around the conversation. If you don't have community, there's no momentum. There's no groundswell. That's the name of my company. There's no groundswell if you don't have community. So those two things, content and community, are the big places I focus
Yeah.
tactically with people.
Well, I love it. And you're absolutely right. And that's exactly what I did. And it finally, after, a lot of bumps in the road and mistakes and basically, I'm not saying it was all bad. I had a lot of fun, a lot of success, but when I was making strategic decisions, a lot of times it was based on the, business growth and growth in income and profit and all that. And instead of really focusing on what was being done in the relationship, how am I helping that person succeed? So I have an index card, it has right on here. My life's mission is to improve the life of every person I come across. Now, when I focus on that, the results just somehow magically show up. And I know it's not magic. It's mathematically speaking, I'm doing what I can best do for that person to help them with their best next step. And as a result, they succeed and they reward me. That's what happens. But what I'm getting at here is I like by the way, I like your website, mygroundswell.com. So I went on there and perused a little bit. So if I was starting out, 20 years ago is when I got my license, January 2002, excuse me.
Nice.
We go to your website. What's, is there like an intake form, an application, maybe get have a consultation first. What, and I'll talk to the agents because you and I both have that common background, but really just could apply to anybody in business. But for the agents, what should they do, or how can they reach out to you? And
I think there's probably two ways. One, you can just message me. I'm most active on Facebook. So you could just, it's facebook.com/Chris.Angell. Angel has 2 L's, but, and just message me. That's the easiest way to do that. Okay. I did put together a workshop in the event that anybody listening to this wanted to hear about a time-saving content model, right? Like, how do you do content in a short amount of time, but gets you the relationship at scale? So there's a landing page on my site. You can go to mygroundswell.com/time. /time. And you'll see there's 2 upcoming dates for that. That's a 1-hour workshop. I think October 3rd and October 12th are the days on that.
Okay.
And it's called the time saver content model. Just how do you create content in a way that's congruent and easy and creates relationship at scale?
Yeah, so it even sounds, I mean, in the way you do it, I mean, I can tell you're a pro because you make it easy for people to engage. It's not complex. They don't have to fly halfway around the country,
right?
Go to some event or hey, for $99, no, just come on and guys, for everybody listening here, I mean, take Chris up on this. It's mygroundswell.com.
It's a free workshop. It's a free workshop. mygroundswell.com/time.
Excellent. I love it. And by the way, when you go do that, folks, please leave a good review for this, because this is something we don't talk about a lot. Everybody's always focused on the next transaction, the next dollar. But I'm telling you, if you focus on this, those things will become a lot more easy. Right. So leave a review. That's the currency of podcast. It's a community service, but quite frankly, and your review is our currency. So we appreciate you doing that. And while you're out there, also go to globalinvestoragent.com. If you are an agent, you're not sure what to do because the market's changing, you definitely should click on learn more. And again, just have a conversation. Come to our class. It's every Monday night. It's free. And for all the business people out there who really feel like, boy, I wish I could invest some of my hard-earned money, grab yourself one of those agents because they're trained to help you do that. So in any case, Chris, any final words of wisdom, something when you're like your first boss or a parent or grandparent that stuck with you through life,
what's coming to mind is, it's not from any of them, but what's coming to mind is just, my own lived experience of, if you can own, I'll say this in the most generous way possible, if you can own the relationship, then you can write your own check. Like if you own the relationships with people,
Mm-hmm.
and the more people you own a relationship with, the more you can write your own check. And so that for me years ago became the game. I'm like, okay, the game for me is relationship. Who can I be relevant to, resonant with? That's why content and community matter, because you own the relationship. If you own the relationship, then you can do whatever you want.
I like it. If you own the relationship, you can write your own check. I remember that one.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, listen, Chris, thank you again for doing this. I know you're quite busy, and I'm sure it's still pretty early out your way.
Thanks for having me, Gary. It's great to be here.
And hopefully, I'd like to have you back on again, and maybe even have you do a appearance on a Monday Night Live class. We'll have to talk about that too. So,
yeah, fun.
Oh yeah. And everybody listening, we'll see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. God bless you and your families, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.